Hey guys, Mike here with EBR, and this is the new Sol X from Blix. Now, this is a beach cruiser priced at a really respectable $14.99, but it's got quite a few things under the hood that make that $14.99 stand out. We're talking things like a torque sensor, electronic hybrid shifting, 70 miles of range, and a 400-pound capacity. So let's take a deep dive into the Blix Sol X and see how this really stacks up for that $14.99. All right, guys, so the Blix Sol X. So it is a class 3 beach cruiser, so we're talking speeds of up to 28 miles an hour. It also has a throttle and pedal assist to get you to that 28 miles an hour, and the bike is UL 2849 certified. Now, they say this bike weighs 62 pounds, and oftentimes when we hear numbers like that, we go ahead and run our own weight test. We just throw it up on our scale here at the shop. And this one surprisingly came in under their advertised weight. So this one was about 60.8 pounds, so right around 61 pounds, despite them advertising the bike at 62. And like I said, many times manufacturers say a lower number than the bike sits. In this case, it was really nice to see it actually weighed what they said it did. In fact, a pound lighter. Now, when it comes to colors, this is their seafoam green, but they have 3 other colors. It's a gray, a blue, and a tan, and they're all kind of in that pastel muted, except for the gray, that's more of like a slate gray color. Now, this only comes in one frame size, but it fits a pretty good range from 5'1" all the way up to 6'2", and it's got a very respectable payload of 400 pounds. So you can really kit this out and take your gear, and it should be more than enough to handle for this bike. Now, when it comes to some geometry numbers on this, the low standover height is going to be just 17 inches, which is going to be really nice for those of you who are concerned about getting on and off a bike, not wanting to throw your leg all the way over, and just normal stability or balance concerns. That's where things like a step-through frame like this really shine. Having a low 17-inch step over just makes life easier. Now, the wheelbase from rear hub to front hub or vice versa is 50.5 inches, so 50.5 inches. A little bit longer than we normally see, but on a beach cruiser that's meant for just slow, chill riding, I think it fits the vibe of the bike pretty well. Now, in the seat post, you've got about 8 inches of adjustability, roughly from the 32-inch mark from the ground up to the 40-inch mark at the top of the seat post stroke there. Now, reach on it is going to be 15.5 inches, but there's a caveat there, and that's because this has an adjustable stem, and the way we have our handlebar pointed right now with the stem gave us a 15.5-inch reach, but depending on how you kit yours out or how you angle that stem, your reach will be different as well. Now, when it comes to tires, they went with a 26-inch setup. We've got 26-inch alloy wheels, and they're wrapped in a 26 by 2.4-inch commuter slick tire. This has reflective striping on the side that kind of stands out when headlights hit it, and puncture protection built into them. Now, they didn't state an estimated PSI or excuse me, a suggested PSI. I've been running right around 30 pounds, and that feels like a good soft spot between, or a good safe spot between having the traction and comfort I need, but really still being able to absorb bumps on the road. It just rides really nice the way it sits. Now, when it comes to lighting, fenders, things like that, I'll start with the fenders right back here. We've got a MIK compatible rack or MIK rear rack. This is rated for roughly 55 pounds. I think their website says 60 pounds on the Blix website, but the MIK rack itself here is stamped saying roughly 55 pounds. Now, the beauty of a MIK rack is a couple things. One is you have a tail light integrated into it, wired into it, not mounted on anywhere. And then on this specific model, they also included turn signals. So you've got your brake light, tail light, turn signals back here. And then this thing's just going to be compatible with all sorts of MIK compatible accessories, rags, pannier bags, child seats, all sorts of stuff. So I like seeing MIK racks on these bikes. And speaking of lighting up front, we've got a nice bright headlight rated at 160 lux. It's bright enough to be seen and to see when you're riding the bike, which is always nice. Coupled with the turn signals in the back, this is something you could equally ride to the beach or ride to work. It's just kind of kitted out for both, which is really neat. Now, when it comes to mounting points, or if you want to further accessorize this, you do have 2 bosses on the seat post tube here, and then 4 for like a front rack up on the head tube. And that really makes up the rest of the mounting points aside from the built-in MIK rear rack. Now, we've also got fenders front and back to help with things like running over puddles, water not spraying up on you when you're riding. And these are a PVC plastic, which If you guys are familiar with our mechanic Ben, he prefers, and I actually prefer the PVC fenders as well. I don't know about longevity, like 10, 15 years down the road, but just in terms of less noise, less chances of rusting, denting, bending, rattling, PVC fenders, in my opinion, are just kind of the way to go. So when it comes to the kind of the heart and soul of any e-bike, that's when we start talking about things like the motor and the battery. So I'll kick things off with the motor here. It is a rear hub motor. It's rated at 750 watts, and it also puts out 70 Newton meters of torque, which is pretty high for something like a beach cruiser. But we'll get into a little bit of how that motor feels more on the ride quality section. But just know that it's very well equipped to not only reach those class 3 speeds, but with that 70 Newton meters of torque, it does a really good job on hills as well. Now, one big change for this Sol X over the original Sol version is this now has a torque sensor. Now, a torque sensor is going to give you a more natural and just more intuitive riding feel. It'll match your effort based on how hard and fast you're pedaling over a cadence sensor, which will just kick on full motor power when the pedals move. It doesn't really understand how fast or slow or how hard or soft you're pedaling, whereas this torque sensor does. And it just ultimately gives you varied power matching your effort. And it just feels better when you're riding. It doesn't feel punchy like a moped. It just feels like you're in better shape than you actually are, which is cool. Now, this has the same riding modes we're all used to. So you've got your pretty typical Eco, Tour, Sport, and Turbo. Eco being the most relaxed and Turbo being the most high-powered portion of the motor's capabilities. But they've also added on this what's called Auto PAS. I personally really like this. Now, normally PAS on a bike, you have to choose one of those high, medium, low settings. But with Auto PAS, you still have all those other options to choose just one. But if you put it in auto, it will simply adjust power dynamically based on how you're riding. So if you're pedaling hard and trying to go fast, it's going to bump up the power. If you're kicking it back and riding it slow, just like that pedal assist system, the power output's going to be the same. So you really can just kind of ride on your own and let the bike figure everything out for you. And coupled with the electronic shifting we're going to talk about in a second and its auto shifting feature, it all kind of wraps up to make a smooth kind of autopilot ride where you simply steer and enjoy the ride. Now, when it comes to the battery on this is a 48 volt battery. It's got 12.8 amp hours, giving us 614.4 watt hours. Now, it also has a 2-year warranty, but the bike itself does, so kind of front to back, including the battery, there's a 2-year warranty. Now, it does come with a key, and normally I would just pull the battery out and show you how to unlock it, take it off for charging or safekeeping. But in this case, we actually don't have the key with us on this bike. But you can see here, there is a key slot right here, and then you can simply release it from its locking position in the seat tube and just pull it up through this hole in the frame. Now, they say this bike will get up to 70 miles of range on a single charge. We put that through a test and I got about 71 miles on the Eco mode or minimum PAS setting. And then on PAS Turbo, the highest one, I still was able to get roughly 32 miles, which again is very solid. It's between 32 and 71 miles on a single charge on kind of a fun little beach cruiser. I think they did a good job in that scenario where you don't need to rely on either charging it every night or you can just go out on longer trips at a time. Either way, it's kind of a win-win for you. Now, when it comes to the drivetrain on the Blix Sol, this is where things kind of get fun and interesting. So this has what I call an electronic hybrid shifting system with auto shifting. Now, when you look at this, you're going to simply see a traditional mechanical micro shift 8-speed derailleur mated to an 8-speed cassette. No real surprises there, and you're probably wondering what gives, because right up here on the handlebar, there's an electronic rocker pad like you see on kind of higher end electronic shifting bikes. Well, what they've done here is you have an electronic rocker pad where you can plus, minus, up, down your shifting, and this will shift for you because it meets a little junction box down here. The electrical signal goes to the junction box then pulls the actual physical cable to make the gear shift. You're probably wondering why, because at surface level, that doesn't seem, it almost seems like you're overcomplicating traditional shifting. And in that sense, you'd probably be right. Now, I will say it's very crisp, very smooth, and I actually like the feature and how it just works in real-time execution. It feels good when you shift. But beyond that, there's a bigger reason why they've done that, and that's because they have what's called auto shifting or eShift. And what that does is when the bike is in auto PAS, you simply hold the plus button on the rocker pad for 2 seconds and that activates auto shifting. At that point, the bike, based on the level of incline you're on, how hard you're pedaling, how fast you're pedaling, it's gonna figure out all the back end math and it's gonna know when to shift, it's gonna know when to give more PAS power, when to pull it back. And that's kind of why I refer to this thing as kind of like, it's like the Autopilot beach cruiser, You simply steer, pedal, and just enjoy the ride, and the bike will figure out the shifting and power delivery on its own. Super cool setup, and at a bike at $14.99, you really don't see stuff like this pushing the innovative boundaries at all. So kudos to Blix for kind of taking some wild shots here and doing something kind of unique. All right, so let's chat about the rest of that drivetrain and how it all works out. So we've got a standard microshift 26 rear derailleur, 8 speeds with an 8-speed cassette. That's a 13 to 32 tooth rear cassette. Up front, we've got a 46 tooth chainring. It's a nice 2-piece chainring and a nice looking matte black chain guard on it. The 46 tooth chainring is mated to 170 millimeter alloy crank arms. And then we have some nice alloy black pedals. They're kind of just typical flat pedals that have some traction studs and reflectors for visibility. Now, the braking on this is handled by the hydraulic disc brakes that are made by or some sort of in-house brand with Blix. We did on the last bike, the Blix Vika we got from them. That braking system was the same, and that one gave us a little bit of trouble with the rotor lining up. But this bike has had phenomenal brakes on it. These brakes have done really well. They are 2-piston calipers with 180 millimeter rotors, but they did use a thicker 2.3 millimeter rotor, which is nice as well. And in addition to that, you have adjustable pulls on the brake levers. So you can turn a little dial up there and the brake lever will get closer or further away just based on the length of your hand and your own comfort level. You can kind of just fine tune that fit for even your brake levers along with that stem up top. Now, when it comes to the saddle, this is going to be Velotrix Comfort Padded Saddle. It's a pretty typical saddle. It is comfortable though, I'll give them that. And I believe it's just unbranded or in-house brand through Blix. Now, the cockpit up here, this is rigid. And like I said earlier, it does have a adjustable stem. And this will allow you to kind of bring this forward, backwards, and then you can loosen the bar clamp and adjust this up or down to really kind of just get whatever fit you need based on your height, your arm length, and really just your comfort level. Now, this is a 700 millimeter long alloy cruiser bar, and it's a true beach cruiser with the wide sweeping back handlebars, and it's in a nice matte black finish. Now, on the ends, you have rubber ergonomic grips. Right here on this right side, you have a twist throttle, kind of like an old school motorcycle throttle. And on both ends, the Blix branded brake levers with these adjustment pull levers, or adjustment pull screws here. Also on this right side, you've got your light, high beams, low beams, you've got your turn signal switches, and your electronic horn. Over here on this side, you have your electronic rocker paddle with plus or minus buttons. It's actually only got 3 buttons total, plus at the top, minus at the bottom, and then your power and mode button to go through display options is on the back side. So really simple setup, and if you look, they also did a good job with the wire management. These are all ran together, and while they're not frame integrated immediately, they still found a way to kind of make it look clean overall. Sometimes we have wires going everywhere with these bikes, and it's nice to see them kind of clean things up just a bit. Now, right here in the center is the display, and there's kind of a lot going on in there, so let's do a close look at the display on the Blix Sol X. All right, so this is the home screen when you power on the bike, and I went ahead and connected my phone and app because you will need to use the eBike Connect app if you want to get in and play with some of the advanced settings. But we'll start with the display itself, and then we'll jump into this app. So right here on the rocker pad, on the back side, like I showed earlier, is the mode button, and that will manage what PAS level you're in. So we're currently in Eco, but you can toggle that through those switches. Go back to off. It shows we're currently in 8th gear, and that will change dynamically based on how we're shifting. Speed in the center, estimated range, and trip for the current session. Because I haven't ridden it this session, we have no data in there. But you can cycle through the rest of the screens. You see the 4 dots on the bottom. To do that, you simply hit the button below, and it will give you the time we've had it powered on for 7 minutes now, walked it across the street, kind of some basic data. Some more just kind of metrics for you to follow, as well as another screen with things like how much riding mode. So in this case, it's only been on eco mode, but if we used maybe 50% eco, 50% sport, it would reflect into this. And then one more will take you back to the home screen. I'll shift now on the rocker pad just so you can see that gear shift change. And then back to 8th. Probably not great for it considering I'm not pedaling right now. I'm sure my mechanic will be very happy I did that. All right, so this is the home screen for the eBike Connect app, which you will need to use to access advanced settings on this bike, specifically things like auto shifting. Now, it does populate just a random picture of a bike. This is not the bike we have, but it did give the right name. And when I make changes here, it does show up on this bike. So I think they're still tweaking and rolling out updates to these apps because it's been updated several times in the few months that I've had it. If we look here, we have our battery meter display here in the center, along with picking our riding mode if we want to do it through the app or through the eBike Connect app, which if you wanted to use it as the display, you could go into ride mode here and it will kind of convert your phone into a real-time display that's larger and easier to work with. But if you don't want to, you don't need to. Now, if you want to go into the toolbox, you can see some other things we have going on here. So like the eBike's info, it's going to have all the software numbers, or serial numbers, firmware versions, and all the firmware versions for the display, controller, and the eShift mechanism. Now, out of that menu, we have the assist settings, and here you can adjust how much power assist you're getting at each level. Obviously, you still have auto mode that will do everything for you if you want, but if you want to fine tune each individual one, you can as well. Over here on eShift, this is going to be where you can make adjustments to the eShift system. It's currently had 2,050 shifts to date, and that changes as we go. And in here, you can mess with the fine tuning of the auto shifting. But when you do, it does give you a warning saying, make sure you know what you're doing. And when you change settings, it could dramatically affect the ride. So I'm not going to change any of those for the purposes of the video because it's currently shifting fine. But if you were having trouble and were maybe working with support, this is where you'd be making changes. Now, if we back up, we can see accessibility, and that's going to be things like switching between imperial or metric or mile an hour and kilometer per hour, turning on or off auto shifting altogether, adjusting auto power off and how long it takes, e-bike sound control, and then just things like tones that it gives you, you can turn those off or on. And then finally you have support, which will just populate a web page that takes you to support. So all in all, it's got everything you need to adjust some more advanced settings like your e-shifting, turn it into a display for your ride, or just kind of tweak settings, get firmware numbers when you need them. Plus you get over-the-air updates on here to update your bike as they roll out more updates to the software. So all in all, a good system, despite maybe the little other bike populating in the screen. All in all, it's been working really well as far as the data numbers that I've been messing with. And I would figure they'll get that part fixed pretty soon. But all in all, a good app and a good display. Nice colors in the display, and you can even see it in direct sunlight. So it's been a good app and good display.
All right, guys, so we're out here on the Blix Sol, and I was out here riding, and I figured I would start with this little gravel road, which is different for us, and definitely not something you're expecting to see on a beach cruiser or a comfort cruiser like this is. But the comfort aspect is kind of key here. These 3-inch wide tires, with a little bit of air down, you can go on almost any terrain. It feels really good, and you can hear my voice even on this rough gravel. It's not shaking and bouncing like a true rigid frame bike normally sounds on gravel. And even this right here is super chunky. And yeah, there's a little bit of shake, but it's really still very comfortable. It just goes to show you that, these are cruisers and they are meant to roll on flat, chill rides. But in the event you got to go down a dirt road from a campground or something, or to a beach access, they still have that capability, and it's still really comfortable. Like, I'm not worried. It doesn't feel super shaky. That was a little tiny bit rough, but all in all, aside from that transition to the pavement, super smooth and comfortable. This big wide sweatback bar, the upright seating position, and this big fat cruiser seat, and the smooth tires. It's just a playful handling, comfortable bike all in all. Now, I'm going to go through things like the auto shifting and the auto PAS here in a second, but let's just see what kind of speeds we're working with as far as this 750 watt motor, because a 750 watt motor with 70 Newton meters of torque is pretty beefy for a beach cruiser, but let's see how that translates to real world just acceleration and speed. So I'm in eco, let's go to turbo. We'll do a throttle to 20 and see how long it takes. 3, 2, 1. And so slightly reserved off the start, but super quick after that. And then boom, we're already at 20. That was really fast, surprisingly fast. They did a good job of programming the acceleration to be just a tad bit dialed back, a little reserved, which kind of fits the theme of a step-through cruiser, but it quickly jumps up to speed and gets confident really, really quickly. So that's with turbo mode and throttle only to 20 miles an hour. But now let's go pedaling up to 28 and see how long it takes. So I'm just gonna do a slow rolling start. 3, 2, 1. I'm going about 3 miles an hour. Go. Oh. All right, let's go. Okay, I don't want to be too much of a jerk behind this guy because we sped up pretty quick. But you can see it gets to 28 fast. I'm gonna let him push up a little bit because I don't want to be that guy who immediately passes him after he passes me, look like I'm trying to race him. But let's just go back up. So 3, 2, 1. I mean, guys, there's no shortage of speed and capability for a beach cruiser like this. It's a little surprising. It's not overpowered. It's just really confident. I think they did a good job with this motor. It kind of balances the line between chill cruiser and also still fun e-bike. So well done there. So the brakes on here are proprietary. They're in-house Blix branded. I don't know where they get them, but let's see how they feel. Let's get going to about 20. And then we'll try the brakes. So 2 piston calipers, 180 millimeter rotors. And we will do a 3, 2, 1, get to 20, 3, 2, 1, stop. I mean, yeah, they do really good. They feel fine. Little scrubby sounding, not necessarily like super. And you know, I can hear the rotors clicking a little bit now, probably because I pressed the brakes so hard. Yeah, I don't hear it anymore. So perform well. No issues with the control or stopping control. Even the modularity in them is a little bit there. They feel fine, they feel good. But being Blix in-house, I couldn't speak to longevity, servicing, things like that. But it's just on surface value, on face value, braking is really nice on these. So let's talk about the automatic shifting. Now, you have to be in auto PAS mode. In auto PAS, we should talk about that first. So you have your traditional off, eco, tour, and turbo. And then you have auto. So let's go out of turbo into auto. Now we're in auto PAS, so I don't need to worry about low PAS, turbo, eco, any of that. It's just gonna figure it out based on how I'm pedaling. So right now I'm barely putting any effort into the pedals. We're going 11 miles an hour. If I speed up that pedaling aggressively, I can tell it's giving me boost speeds there because it bumped me up to over 20 really fast. So the auto PAS is gonna be something that's just nice in general because you're not worried about like when to shift your PAS, when to shift or when to change it. It's just going to do that thinking for you based on how you're riding. And one less adjustment, if you don't care to make them, is always going to be a nice feature. Now where it gets interesting is when you're in auto PAS mode, they've added another layer to this. I call it beta mode autopilot, which is where you can auto shift. So right now you've got your rocker panel. I can shift down. You hear the clicks. Just like a traditional electronic shifting pod switch here. But if we want auto PAS, let the bike figure out when to do the shifting, we switch it to auto PAS mode. Now to do that, I'm going to stop the bike because I don't know if it needs to be stopped or if it can do it rolling. Well, let's try it rolling and see if it works. We're going to hold the minus button and it should change that 7th gear logo to an auto logo. So let's hold. And it doesn't look like it's going to do it there. Oh, that's walk mode, that's why. So hold the plus button. And there we go, auto mode activated. So we got auto PAS and auto shifting. So in theory, I shouldn't have to do anything. And while I said that, it went down 2 downshifts from 7th gear down to 5th. So it already knew like, hey, you don't need this super hard gear, you're barely moving, let's dial it back. And it did it. Now, there's the full disclosure that this is in beta mode, so it's not perfect, but I can tell you, I tested another Blix bike just a couple months ago, and it had the same feature, and it was substantially not as good. So they're making improvements constantly to this, and with over-the-air updates you can do through the app, you don't have to worry about anything but turning on your bike, updating your bike, and you'll get these updates as they roll out. So we went all the way down to 4th gear, or the bike chose to go down to 4th gear because we're doing nice and relaxed riding. Let's see if the bike figures out, hey, I want to go faster. Let's see if it shifts up and gives me more pedal resistance. So here I go, shifting harder. So I didn't get anything there. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. All right, so a couple things there. You may have noticed my hands kind of went like that when it shifted. It's because I was pedaling fast, trying to make it. I was influencing the shifting, and it did shift in the middle of that, and it kind of surprised me. We're back up in 7th gear. So if you weren't doing what I'm doing, which is trying to kind of just, I'm like exaggerating my cycling to get the bike to do something. If you were riding this though, it would have done that much smoother because you would have been pedaling naturally. Now there's an incline up ahead, so it's downshifting again because we've slowed back down. So it seems to be working really well. And again, it's a nice improvement from how it was just a month or two ago. But all in all, let's get to that little incline up ahead. Use some throttle here. The bike is certainly cruisy, man. You could just, this is like a chill, fun little ride. I like it. So you saw my legs started spinning quickly because it's starting to figure it out. It just shifted up to 5th gear. 5th gear seems all right. I got some pedal resistance, but we got a little incline ahead. Let's see if it figures it out. Pedaling's getting harder. Pedaling's getting harder. Now it's getting hard. We're on an incline. So it downshifted there. Downshifted again. Pedaling's getting easier. Yeah, it just handled it really well. Let's see if it upshifts now. There it goes. 4th gear, 5th gear. Yeah, guys, it's working really well. This is kind of fun. All in all, this Blix at $15.99, really comfortable, plenty speedy, and some really cool tech. It's going to be great for anybody who's just looking for a fun, comfortable cruiser e-bike, who likes a little bit extra tech and a little bit of, you know, some autopilot features on their bike. All in all, it's really well done. It's kind of fun to play with, and it makes riding an e-bike just that much more enjoyable because you're not worrying about what buttons to hit, what speed you should be on, what PAS. It's just doing everything for you. So really well done, really cool to play with. And let's go talk to Ben about it. All right, guys, this is that time where we let Ben do the talking and kind of share his long expertise on wrenching on bikes and give his thoughts about pros and cons or things he would improve on this bike. I'm gonna let him do his thing and get out of the way, but thank you to Feedback Sports. I don't know if you guys have ever bought a cheap bike rack. I personally own a cheap bike rack, and I every day am fumbling with it and it's tipping over and it drives me crazy. And then when I come to work and I use this one, it's a good reminder of what a good bike rack feels like. This thing's durable, stable, easy to use, and it makes me want to steal from my job every day and take it home. But if you guys want to check out their stuff, there'll be a link in the description. Ben, I'll get out of your way. Just start with what you like about the Blix Sol X.
All right, thanks, Mike. This is a pretty simple bike and it's got a lot of cool things about it, so I'll keep it short. First things first, moving from front to back. I really like that it's got a threadless steer tube and stem. So that, as I've covered in other videos, that means that if you need to replace the fork, the bearings, or the stem, parts are usually pretty easy to find at every bike shop. That being said, this is an adjustable stem, which makes it so that you can raise and lower the front end of the handlebar with just 2 bolts. Usually, or not usually, but sometimes with a stem that's adjustable, you get a lot of flex out of it when you're cornering or standing up on the bike and pedaling. This is a pretty solid system, so I think they did a great job with that. I always like plastic fenders. It seems like they are quieter. They can take a little bit of an impact and not dent, and the paint doesn't chip, so good point there. Plus, they're lighter. Aluminum pedals are a great addition to a bike at this price point. That just means if and when the bike is tipped over, or perhaps if transportation, or when you're transporting it, it falls over, aluminum pedals can just take a much more of a beating without cracking or breaking. So that's really nice to see. The rack I do like, and I'll get back to this one. The rack, because it's got a very nice big platform on it, it means you can put a pretty good amount of weight on there and support it just by its footprint. So that's a great rack to have on there. It's nice to see a bike that's got this kind of cable management to it too. Very nice looking, easy to look at. You know, even if I were to, or a mechanic was to take things apart It's just easy to unwrap this plastic sheath and get to the cables, but it looks great right out of the box. You know, the other really cool thing, I'll just mention two more cool thing about this, is the shifting. So it's half electric and then half cable driven. I've messed around with these before a few times in the past with different results. On this bike with this system, it just seems to work great. So it's a cool feature that does work great. So hey, if you could get something that cool and it works, why not, right? The brakes on this bike, originally I complained about them because they didn't work very well. They were really tough to adjust. However, what we've found is after a lot of test rides, these things feel awesome. The lever pull is different. Somehow the pistons reset in the fluid. I'm not sure. The caliper, something changed and I didn't do anything to it, but they feel awesome. So I'm going to take back what I've said before about Blix brakes and say right now, thumbs up. That's what I've got, Mike.
Nice, man. And what kind of things would you improve on the Sol X?
There's really only two things that I can pick on with this one, and they're just kind of being picky. I really prefer to see chains that are zinc coated or somehow more corrosion resistant. These bikes are going to be ridden through rain or puddles. That's why they've got fenders on them. So what rain and puddles do is they'll just tend to make the chain rust quicker. So some sort of a corrosion resistant chain, whether it's stainless steel or zinc coated, would be a great addition. As much as I do like this rack and how big and burly it seems, it's only got 2 attachment points. Okay, fine. 2 attachment points are okay if they're to the frame. Secondly, or the first one is that they attach it here to the dropout. The secondary point is to the fender. So what the problem might arise to be is if this bolt breaks right here, then all of a sudden the rack has no support and it'll tend to move with weight or over bumps. So I think in a case like this, it would be a good idea to have a secondary rack strut from the rack to the frame, just to make sure that if somebody prefers to remove the fenders or if that bolt breaks, then you don't have any problems with the rack. That's all I've got. This is otherwise a really cool bike.
Yeah, agreed, man. Thanks for your time, Ben.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Blix Sol X, kind of in a nutshell. So this is a very solid beach cruiser. I know we've done several beach cruisers before. I think this one, though, coming in at its $14.99 price, is just a really solid, well-done beach cruiser that keeps things at an affordable price, but also really pushes the boundaries with some innovative tech. We've got things like this auto PAS, auto e-shifting, as well as a torque sensor in the motor, 750-watt motor, class 3 speeds. It's just a well-done bike. As you saw, Ben, the mechanic, he even was he kind of likes this one as well. It's just one of those bikes that all of us played with and we thought, well done. So if you're in the market for a beach cruiser or a commuter, and this is kind of one that meets your needs, it could do a little bit of anything. It's got the whole beach cruiser vibe nailed down perfectly. But with things like high and low beams, turn signals, brake lights, tail lights, rear rack, you could also make this just a fun commuter. It's really kind of a blank canvas to do what you want with it. With that said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If I missed anything or didn't cover something you wanted covered, drop a comment down below and I will personally get that figured out for you. And if you haven't done so, consider liking this video and subscribing to the EBR channel. And until then, I'll see you guys out there on the trail.